let's say the resistance is has been in every province of the country now. Do you think that this is it for the Islamic Republic, or they can still call in more control from the IRGC? Because as
That's
far
a
as I
good
can tell, they've
question.
never looked in a more worse position geopolitically and economically.
I don't know. I wish I would give you a better answer on that because I thought with Mashal last year I thought this was it. I think or 3 years ago Mashal
3 years
was
ago,
murdered.
late 22.
Yeah, I think the big difference now between now and then is that you had attacks against Iranian nuclear sites. I think now people see how weak the regime actually was. I mean, look, Iran wasn't able to defend its own airspace, right? And because of that, Israel was able to walk right in, and they were running drones. I mean, we're not even stealth drones. We're talking about they were running regular Hermes drones over Tehran.
This is the Global Gambit.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Global Gambit podcast. My guest today is a returning one, a good friend of the show, Ryan McBeth, who runs his own YouTube channel and has plenty to say about, well, plenty of things that are happening. I just don't even know where to begin, everybody. Usually we split this into sort of two halves with Ryan, but I'm still going to do that because I think it's better for consumption, but also just because what do we talk about? I don't know, Ryan, where do we even start? What I was going to ask you how you saw the N25, and then Venezuela happened, and we also have the protests in Iran, and we also have now threats over Greenland. We also have Cuba. Ukraine is obviously still going on. The Europeans seem to still be continuing along the same trajectory. What should we start with in your mind? What would you say is the most important thing that determines so many of these other things that could happen now?
Most important thing would be Venezuela because it affects quite a few of the situations that you just mentioned. This would be Venezuela affects Iran, Venezuela affects Russia, Venezuela affects China. But the only thing it doesn't affect is Greenland. But essentially, what the U.S. just did is it told the Chinese and the other European powers that they need to stay out of our hemisphere. Now that was the essential upshot of this exercise, where in 2 hours, a former head of state, or I don't even know what to call this guy. Is he a head of state, former head of state? Illegitimate head of state, but essentially we did a snatch and grab operation against a guy he did have an indictment. What I kind of find funny is I don't like to play like red side good, blue side bad or whatever, but one of the final things that the Biden administration did in their time in office was raise Maduro's his
Bounty.
uh, yeah, his bounty to $25 million. And
I thought it
then
was 50 now.
well, now it's 50. But one of the
Oh,
last
right.
things the Biden administration did, they know he was a bad dude. And so one of the last things they did before they left office was raise the bounty to $25 million. And then you had former Vice President Harris come on and saying how illegal this action was. And I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, I am not a huge fan of the president, but Trump derangement syndrome is real. Trump could declare war on Nazis tomorrow, and there would be people on the left wing that would be putting swastikas on their cards. Stay away from those Nazis. Do you remember when Mitt Romney? I don't know how closely you follow American politics, but do you remember when Mitt Romney he said 47% of people won't vote for him, so he just discounted those people. And there is a section of the country where nothing will ever be good enough, right? And I can understand that because you do have a president who's very boorish, right? Like he says things, and in
Boorish is a
fact,
good word.
he's boorish. And
No,
I
look,
think
I
that
mean,
made for great reality television. Doesn't make for great statesmanship.
no, I mean, look,
Right.
my position is quite simple. I think I largely follow the same prevailing, which is I hated Maduro, but I don't think what the US did or how it did it was necessarily the wisest way. But then again, who's going to stop them? From a purely military standpoint, no other country could do what the US did, and it was a incredible display of not just force but efficiency and speed. Snatch and grab, as you said, it was remarkable. I'm actually here in Mexico on the same time zone as Caracas, and so I was walking home Friday night. and I was on X Spaces, talking to some friends, and it just happened to be the biggest space of the night because suddenly we're in there. It's a military orientated conversation, and then we just start. Everyone starts going, "There's explosions in Caracas." Oh, he's not, is he? And then it happened. The whole thing lasted. I think you said 2 hours. I think it was 90 minutes, even quicker than that. Because I remember it by about 3:30, he announced, "Oh, Maduro's out." Just
I say two
from a
hours.
military
The
standpoint, what
whole
do you think?
operation lasted about three. I mean, because we're also talking about SEAD or suppression of enemy air defenses.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But we could just say one period of darkness.
It
That would
took,
be one. That would be one way of saying it. Now there have been like jokes online that have been going around saying like this is how you do a special military operation.
yeah, well, yeah, of course. Russia's 3 day op, it was America's 3 hour op. So, yeah. But just from a military standpoint, like when you watched it back or you observed it,
Mm-hmm.
how does that make you feel about the competency of the US
Oh,
and the
I mean
military?
we're great at this. I mean it's so one of the things that I kind of have to understand is that um, Russia is has more experience. Russia and Ukraine have more experience than the United States when it comes to LISCO or large scale combat operations because they've been doing them for 4 years. The U.S.'s main experience is has been in counterinsurgency because we did that for a little over 20 years. So one thing we got really freaking good at is going someplace in the middle of the night, kicking in a door, grabbing someone, and getting them out of there. We got really good at that. We got really good at drone strikes as well. And you can only imagine how that whole Black Hawk Down thing would have went if the U.S. had 20 years of insurgency experience. The operation against Mohammed Farid Aidid probably would have been a lot smoother if the U.S. had 20 years of experience. So I think that operation wasn't just a credit to the special forces, and it was, but it was also a testament to our institutional knowledge that we have retained since the end of the global war on terror. That's what we're really good at now because we've been doing it for 20 years.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I was listening to one conversation and they were emphasizing how the US has had a lot of failed wars or never met often its objectives in the theatre of war. But no country wants to have a sort of extended war of attrition, a protracted conflict. And so the idea that the US went in, got its main objectives complete and out in 3 hours is a demonstration that the US military is very capable. No country's going to be great in a conventional kinetic warfare. I mean, look at what the Russians have been experiencing, right? I don't know if you would agree with that sort of rather blunt assessment or summary, but yeah. And so with the military buildup of the naval assets around northern Venezuela, like, do you think that this was inevitable? Because from my understanding, they were training this. They built a replica of Maduro's house, and they were doing what the British did in Operation Nimrod, 1980, against the Iranian embassy when they had to go in
No.
there and get the hostages out. Is that just the way that it's done these days?
No, I mean, I think it was. I mean, yeah, I mean, that would be that would be the way it is done these days. Build a replica and actually go in and practice until. I think it was General Kane who said, "You do it not until you can't get it wrong, but until every possible situation can be accounted for in your practice drills, right?" And I think this was inevitable because the day that President Trump brought an aircraft carrier or ordered an aircraft carrier into the Caribbean, Maduro was finished. I even said it. I said it like 2, 3 times in subsequent videos. The president literally can't take that aircraft carrier away without deposing the president. Like he said, look, you're done. We have a warrant or we have an indictment. You're done. Unless there was some major problem in the Middle East or something where they needed an aircraft carrier immediately, there's no way in hell that aircraft carrier was going away. It was staying there until President Maduro was deposed. How that happened it was kind of up in the air. We really didn't know.
Well, I was going to ask you about this. There's what's the word? speculation around, that this was some pre-planned agreement and that sort of Maduro was fished out under the guises that, he had to be forced out. But and obviously people who say this is because the wife was taken. She was taken, and that's not really done in snatch and grab ops. Is that bollocks? This is a genuine acquisition of him and
Are you saying it could be a self-surrender?
sort of thing? Yeah.
There were situations in Iraq where someone decided to surrender and we went in kinetically anyway, just so that their neighbors could have deniability, like just so that nobody would assume that this guy was what do you call it, working with U.S. forces. So
Well, he was an informant.
it could be a situation where Maduro self-surrendered and the U.S. went in and they grabbed everybody. They grabbed the president and his wife. However, I think the other possibility is that I think she was on the indictment as well, and this could have been a 2-for-1 deal. Plus, if you leave her behind, now you have a touchstone that people can rally around and say, look, the president's wife is still here and she can give speeches and she can hold up his picture. But now, of course, they can do that with his son as well, because his son is still in Nicoletto or whatever. He's still in Venezuela and can do that. So I'm not entirely sure whether it was a self-surrender or not, but I don't think it was. I think this was a forced operation, because honestly, why the hell would you self-surrender? Maduro could have just gone to Russia or gone to another third-party country and lived the rest of his life there in luxury. My favorite line is, he could have been playing Fortnite with Assad. Assad is a big video gamer, apparently. And Maduro could have been playing Fortnite with Assad in Russia and living out the rest of his life in luxury. So you're going to self-surrender to the U.S. and be in a jail cell? I don't want to be in a jail cell.
Well, I saw one meme from Chris Cappy, right? Talking about how to steal Maduro's look if you want, which trackies he was wearing and stuff. So,
Yeah,
guys,
I don't want that.
guys,
I've never been in jail, so I don't think it's nice.
No, but if you want, I'm dropping a new line of merch actually, the Maduro special, brand new for 26. So, okay, obviously this has ramifications beyond just Venezuela now. I'm producing a series of videos for specific elements here. I've done one on Russia just yesterday. I've done one on Iran, and it's those kind of areas that I'm curious for your thoughts about. Also Cuba. Realistically for me, this is the biggest setback of any country is, apart from Cuba, perhaps economically and its own survival, is Iran. They've lost a huge foundation in the Latin American, Western Hemisphere, to use Trump's determined language, I suppose, for the Russians, obviously, as well, and China. But just on Iran for a second, do you think that this is going to be an absolute, I hate to use the term, but game changer, a real kick in the teeth, even more than the mullahs are facing as it is?
It's not going to be easy. So one of the things about Venezuela is that supposedly there were Hezbollah training bases there, like Hezbollah was training with FARC, which is a Colombian organization. And, the other thing that Maduro would do is he would issue diplomatic passports to various people who were in no way diplomats of Venezuela. So, issue a diplomatic passport to a drug dealer, a diplomatic passport to a Hezbollah terrorist. Now this dude can travel all around the world with a diplomatic passport. Of course, I guess Iran could do that as well, but people might be a little more suspicious of an Iranian diplomatic passport. But I guess kind of the deal here is that what you have is Iran losing a level of influence in South America, and Iran is a basket case right now. It's almost like someone put the noose around, like a hangman's noose, around the mullahs' necks, and then planted a tree. And they just waited for that tree to grow. Like, this has been a tree growing for almost 50 years, right? And now the noose is now like tight, right? You have Iran, who doesn't have a lot of friends in the world right now, right? They thought Russia was going to come to their aid when Israel was pounding them. Russia said, no, we're not. We got our own problems we're dealing with. I think the dollar is at a record low against the Iranian rial. I believe the name of the currency is pronounced.
Yeah, the real is it's gone down by another. It's now 1.4 million to the dollar. It's
It's
gone down by
it's
another
crazy, right?
200,000.
And you have a regime who has ignored one of the issues here is that the current Iranian regime, the IRGC has kind of wormed its way into every facet of life, everything from like bottling soda to like construction. And so if you are an Iranian and you want to start a construction company, you're bidding against the IRGC for projects. Well, who's going to win that government contract? It's probably not going to be you, right? It's going to be the IRGC, right? Because they've wormed their way into so many things that now it's basically impossible to bid against them in contracts. And when you have something like that, the weird thing is that it's very difficult to run your economy unless you join the IRGC. There aren't a lot of job opportunities, there aren't a lot of opportunities for outside investment or for economic development because the freaking IRGC is now basically the state corporation of Iran. So they're in this kind of weird thing where the IRGC gains so much power. When you gain that amount of power, you don't necessarily want to give it up, right? So you have, I think, 30% of Iran is under the age of 30 or under the age of 20. Is one of those two numbers. Let's even say it's 30. So you're an Iranian and you can't you're educated because schooling is subsidized. You want to get married, right? There's really no premarital sex in Iran, and people want to have sex. In order to have sex, you have to get married. In order to get married, you have to have a home. Well, if you can't get a job and you can't get a job and you can't buy a house and you can't get married, then you're not having sex. And when that happens, people get a little frustrated. And so I think that's why you see people throwing rocks in the street. Yeah, the hijab thing is an issue, but I would actually concentrate on jobs, not hijab, right? Like, think about it like that. Like, hijabs are a symptom. It's jobs that are the big deal. And people look at Iran, the Iranian government, and they go, what are these guys doing for us? It might be nice to have your own little fiefdom theocracy, but at the end of the day, you have, I think it's 76 million inhabitants of Iran. I'm doing that off the top of my head, who want to get on with their lives. And when the government isn't working for the people, like, that's when people start throwing rocks.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, right? Because the scale of the protest has been something that has been debated. I certainly think they're growing now. There's been illustrations that the protests, the riots, whatever, resistance. Never really know what word to use when describing things of this nature. Because they're constantly in a state of flux and sort of increasing magnitude or decreasing. But let's say the resistance has been in every province of the country now. Do you think that this is it for the Islamic Republic, or they can still call in more control from the IRGC? Because as far as I can tell, they've never looked in a more worse position geopolitically and economically.
I don't know. I wish I'd give you a better answer on that, because I thought with Mashal last year, I thought this was it. I think, or 2 years ago, I thought this was it. No, 3 years ago, Mashal
3 years ago. Late 2022.
Yeah, I think the big difference now between now and then is that you had attacks against Iranian nuclear sites. I think now people see how weak the regime actually was. I mean, look, Iran wasn't able to defend its own airspace, right? And because of that, Israel was able to walk right in, and they were running drones. I mean, we're not even stealth drones. We're talking about they were running regular Hermes drones over Tehran with impunity, and Iran could do nothing about it. When people see that, they go, oh my God, my government can't do anything. They might be pretty good at shooting people who can't shoot back, but it kind of showed the government's weakness there. So this might be a little bit different. And all it takes is the Artesh, the Iranian army, to say, you know what? We're tired of this. And there is, pardon me, there is gun ownership in Iran. It's not like the U.S. It's not even like the U.K. China, I'm sorry, there are like civilian ownership of shotguns, like farmers have shotguns and stuff like that. There is some gun ownership, but it's not extensive. On the border between Iran and Iraq, those people are mostly Arabs, and there is a cultural association with owning firearms among Arabs, even Arabs in Iran. So there's plenty of illegal guns. So if you're going to see something pop off, it's probably going to be near the border with Iraq. Because since those people are ethnically Arab, they have relatives across the border, they have access to firearms, because Iraq, for the longest time, was awash in guns. And Iraq had gun laws that were I don't want to say fairly liberal. They were there was a gun, Iraq had a gun culture, and Iraq had a hunting culture that was similar to the United States. Now, one interesting thing here is that if you see a revolution start there, then the Artesh, the army, might say, you know what, we know what side our bread is buttered on, we're going to start fighting the IRGC. The Artesh is bigger than the IRGC, even though the IRGC has better weapons. So,
how big is the Artesh then?
Oh my God. This is the problem with going on podcasts. I don't want to give a number because I can't remember. I want to say,
I've got it, it's fine. It's the conventional armed forces.
What's that? It's like it was out 800,000?
340,000 active personnel.
Yeah, all right, 340. So we're counting just the army, but if you bring in all security forces, probably around 800,000. But all right, yeah, 300,000.
No, that says 300,000 ground forces, 20,000 air, 10 navy, 10 air defense.
All right.
No, that's what they say. I don't know.
Okay.
So you explain to me a little bit more the difference between the IRGC and the the army, then.
Yeah. All right. So 300,000. IRGC isn't that big, right? And don't forget, the Artesh is what do you call it? The Artesh is a conscript force. Like every male has to serve in the Artesh, and it's, I don't want to say secular, since most of Iran is Muslim, although they do have Christians, and I believe there are still some Jews in Iran. In fact, I think it's in their constitution they have to have at least one Christian and one Jewish member of their parliament. For the most part, the army is secular in the sense that it's not as religiously extreme as the IRGC. And in that case, you could see the army kind of turn around and point their guns inward instead of outward. And that's going to be a problem. Even though their army isn't, I want to say their army isn't that good. Like, spoke with one guy who was conscripting the Artesh for 2 years. He said he only got one uniform and he only fired 8 rounds through his rifle during training. like 8 rounds, just to familiarize himself with the action. It's not a lot, it's not a lot.
No, that surprises me. Okay, so what do you think could happen then in Iran if things just keep getting worse? We've had that security cabinet meeting by the Israelis over the weekend. Mm-hmm. Trump's made it clear that, he's interested in taking advantage, exploiting the situation with what's going on in Iran right now. Do you think we're going to see operations happening by the Israelis and Americans? Do you think Mossad might already be on the ground, stirring up discontent, taking advantage with psyops and things? There's
no doubt in my mind that Mossad is on the ground, but they're going to be on the ground anyway. U.S., I don't know. That's actually a pretty good question. If the U.S. helps, it's probably going to help with, I think I mentioned this before, not rivet joint, with aircraft that will command solo. Aircraft, that can override radio and television signals. So the U.S. might help with cyber attacks. U.S. might help with command solo aircraft that will loiter above Iran and essentially give instructions to people by overriding radio and TV signals. Now, that's certainly a possibility as well. But it really all depends on how protests turn into a revolution. The U.S. probably shouldn't be in the business of overthrowing governments because we're really, really bad at it. But one thing we are good at is kinetic action. And if we allow these people to form their own rebellion, I'm not saying we should drop weapons, so that can get bad real quick. But what we could do is kind of give it a push, right? Perform electronic warfare so that police and military can't coordinate, use command solo C-130 aircraft to override radio and TV signals, maybe even use cyber attacks to take out IRGC cyber units so that way they can't shut down the internet. We do that stuff, we can help Iran, give Iran a little push, and you might actually see some sort of revolution. I don't know if it's going to turn into a Jeffersonian democracy, but you will certainly see the end of the mullahs, although I'm not entirely sure what that gets replaced with afterwards.
Yeah, I think a operation is inevitable. I find it hard to believe that there wouldn't be an exploitation of what's happening right now. It's just, as I say, I don't think Iran has looked this vulnerable, or the government has looked this vulnerable ever, right? After the 12-day war, the geopolitical isolation, Russia's focus on Ukraine, the now loss of Venezuela, the Shia Crescent, Hezbollah, their entire proxy network largely dismantled.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, we have... I can't think of a single friend, right? Who's friends with Iran? What? There's no such thing as friends, only allies, right? That is kind of a thing, right?
Well, tell that to the Danish.
Okay.
I think you mean only interest. No, but the Chinese don't care who manages Iran as long as they get what they want, right? I think that's pretty clear. And the Russians didn't come to the Syrians, they've not come to the Armenians, they've not come to Venezuela, so they're not going to do anything over Iran. Is this not at any point another indication that Europe needs to get up off its arse and be strategically autonomous, be it military, economic, whatever?
I think it does. It's never going to be equal to the power of the United States. I mean, the idea of Europe fighting the United States it's absolutely absurd, both from the standpoint of being an alliance